I'll be honest with you. When I heard about camp, I missed camp last year. I was in another country. When I started thinking about camp this year, I didn't know what to expect, really. Booneville, my home congregation, does something kind of like camp. They call it family retreat, and it's done in the fall instead. But Booneville tried it for a few years, and it kind of fizzled out, and people didn't want to go, and all these things, so they quit doing it. So I didn't know what to expect. But camp has been such a blessing to me, and I think to everybody that went. And if you didn't get to go, I hope you get to come next year. And I want to thank Johnny and Kim for heading that up and doing the work, and for everyone that did their part in that. We're going to be in 2 Kings tonight, 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5. I've always heard there's three things to know if you had a good camp or a bad camp. So the three things, the three signs that you can go off of to know that you had a good camp is, number one, you have a sore body. Whether it be from playing or from the beds or whatever, you're sore the next day. Number two is that you're uplifted and that you've grown closer to those people that were there. And number three, the following Sunday night, after you all gotten back and probably not taking naps, you're falling asleep during the sermon, that night. So hopefully that won't be the case tonight. But 2 Kings chapter 5. The first part of this, from verses 1 through 14, is the story of Naaman. Naaman was the commander of the army of Syria. We don't have time to read all of this, but he was the commander of the army of Syria, which was at war with Israel. He had leprosy, and this young girl that we read about in verses 2 through 4 says, "Hey, I know of a guy in Israel. His name is Elisha, and you should go talk to him." So Naaman goes down, and you get to verse 5 and 6, and he brings with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he went to the king of Israel, and the king of Israel read this letter. It said, "Hey, I've heard that you or someone can heal me of this leprosy." And you get to verse 7, and the king of Israel says he tore his clothes, and then he said, "How can I do this? I don't have the power. I'm not God." And then you get to verse 8, and Elisha hears about it. And then most of us know the story after that. Naaman goes to Elisha. Elisha says, "Dip in the Jordan 7 times, and you'll be healed." And then Naaman says, "There are much cleaner rivers, other places." And then his servant tells him, "You should do it." And he goes and dips 7 times, and then he's made whole. And eventually, out of all that, out of the physical element, he comes to God. But I want us to focus on a little bitty part of this story, something that something that I looked over. And it's verses 2 through 4. I want to focus on the little girl. Let's read verses 2 through 4. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "Would that my lord were the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went and told his lord thus, and spoke the girl from the land of Israel. So this girl, who had been taken as a slave out of her home country, we don't know how old she is. It just says here that she's a little girl. So she could be anywhere from little to little. We don't know. But it says that she spoke up, and she said, "Hey, I know a guy that can help you." And a side note to this, I have a hard time relating to some of the prophets and some of the big characters in the Bible, like Elisha. Elisha did great things, and it's hard for me to relate with him. How can we sometimes do great things like that? But I think all of us can do what this little girl did. She just spoke up, and she said, I know a guy. Any of us has the power to do that. And a lot of people look at this story, and they think Elisha is the main character of this story. And he is. But the thing is, none of this would have happened if you look at verses 5 all the way down to 14. None of that would have happened if the little girl had not said something first. It was all contingent. It was all based off of the fact that she said something. So I want to look at 3 things that we can learn from this little girl and what she did. The first one is that she listened. She was aware. She was paying attention. She lived under his house. And I doubt that Naaman was physically talking with the little girl saying, I have leprosy, blah, blah, blah. That didn't happen. But she was listening to the conversations that Naaman had with his wife. And she was aware. So I asked I asked myself, am I aware? Am I listening to the problems of other people? Do I even take the time to care about other people? I struggle with this, especially with Morgan. I'm a male, so I struggle with a thing called selective hearing. I don't know if anyone else here does, but I do. And it's something that I have to work on continually. And it makes me think of Acts chapter 3. Acts chapter 3, in verses 1 through 6. Acts chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. And it says, Now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the 9th hour of prayer. And a man lame from birth was being carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, that is called Beautiful, to ask alms of those entering the temple. Seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple, he asked to receive alms. And Peter directed his gaze at him, as did John, and said, Look at us. And he fixed his attention on them, expecting to receive something from them. But Peter said, I have no silver and gold, but what I do have I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk. It says here that Peter and John were on their way to the temple to pray. They had a goal. They had an objective. They were going to do something. But they took the time. They paid attention to this man who talked to them. And from that, he was brought to Christ. I think of a girl that I dated in high school, and that she was a really nice girl, and she came to church, and she talked to people on her row, and then she went home. And even in life, she never really stepped out of her lane, if that makes any sense. She always just kind of did her own thing. And as Christians, we are required to talk to other people about Christ. We are required to bring people to Christ. The second point that I want to look at of this little girl is that she had compassion. She had compassion. The difference between good intentions and compassion is the fact that something actually gets done. I think of this girl and how, and there's so many lessons we can learn. She could have held a grudge for being taken away from her homeland, and she didn't. But she had compassion. She said, you have a problem, and I have a solution. And I'm thankful that Jesus Christ had compassion on us. I think of passages like Matthew chapter 14, verses 14, and how it shows the compassion that he had. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. I struggle with sometimes having good intentions, but not fulfilling those intentions with compassionate actions. Like, I should send this person a card, or I should go see this person, or I should go do this, or I should go do that. And that's the difference between good intentions and actual compassion. Before I get into the third point, I want to look at something that we shouldn't do. Go go back to 2 Kings, and we'll go to chapter 5 and verses 5 through 7. And right now we're going to be looking at the king of Israel. Verse 5, and it says, "And the king of Syria said, 'Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel.' So he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, 'When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you Naaman my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy.' And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, 'Am I God, to kill and to make alive? And this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy. Only consider and see how he is seeking a quarrel with me.' This grown man, the king of Israel, the king of God's people, sees this and sees it as a physical problem. This man has leprosy. He thinks, I can't cure leprosy. No one ever, at this point, has ever cured leprosy. It's not going to happen. He's just wanting to get in a fight with me, is what he's wanting to do. He saw the physical side of it. He didn't see the fact that Elisha was in that country and that he could have saved him from his leprosy. And that takes me to my third point. The little girl, she took a physical problem. She took the leprosy of Naaman, and she solved that problem. And in the process, she solved all of Naaman's other problems, as in his spiritual problems. The king of Israel was very caught up in the physical things. And I think of things like camp and how you can go to camp and still miss the big picture. I can go to camp and people not have songbooks, and I get so caught up with everybody getting a songbook that I forget the words of the songs, or I forget what it actually means to sing praises to God. Or I can get so caught up in packing things or food or things that don't matter, and I miss the picture that we're there to spend time with each other and to grow with each other and to grow in God with one another. I think of Luke chapter 10 and how you have Mary and Martha, and Jesus has come to their house, and Martha's getting everything together and fixing food and getting the house together, and Mary is just sitting at Jesus' feet. She realizes the big picture. The food will get taken care of, but Jesus is here at this moment, and she wanted to take advantage of that. So with this, I have 4 questions and 4 challenges to go along with those questions. The first question is, are we being aware of our surroundings? Before all this had to happen with this little girl, she had to realize that Naaman had leprosy. She took the time to listen to him, or to listen to the problems that he had. Are we being aware? And I think the biggest reason why we're not aware sometimes is we start to focus on ourselves. We got bills to pay, we have kids to, well, I don't have kids to take care of, but some of y'all had kids to take care of. Hopefully I will. Not too soon, but kind of soon. But things to do, things to get done. Sometimes we get so honed in on getting those things done that we forget about other people's problems and the fact that a lot of people have bigger problems than our own that we could be helping them with. My second question is, are we being compassionate? Like I said, this is something that I struggle with because I feel like I have some of the best intentions around, as in I want to do good things, and I know most people in here want to do good things. But the question is are they getting done? Are those intentions turning into compassionate actions? Number 3, are we getting caught up in the physical things, like the camp illustration? Are we getting caught up in the songbooks that we're forgetting the songs? Are we getting caught up in life and activities and programs that we forget the people that are in those programs. And the last question is, and I think probably the most important question with this girl, she pointed him to the solution to his problem. She pointed him not just to the physical solution to his problem, but to his spiritual problem. So are we pointing people to Jesus? Because that's the answers to our spiritual problems and a lot of our physical problems. We spend our lives trying to fill the void with this and with that. Are we pointing people to Jesus? Church, if there's anything we can do for you, please come as we stand and as we sing.